to the treasure chest. Each week, we will open this chest together and discover a treasure for our faith journey. Prayers, practices, wisdom that can guide us in everyday life. I am Deacon Hilary Bengoche, a fellow pilgrim on our journey. Lord, may we open our hearts to the treasures of your kingdom. May we receive them with joy, and may we live them with love. Amen. Hello friends, and welcome to episode 2 of Treasure Chest. I had been planning to speak about New Testament and all that it entails and the insights of the New Testament. But ever since, it's about 2 or 3 weeks now, I've been having a growing sense that there is a culture, there is a rising, a feeling, a sense of like the universal subconscious in violence. Whenever I turn on the television, whenever I look at media on my iPad, when I listen to the radio, when I listen to all the different things, all I hear is a growing sense of violence. I don't know if that's been your experience, but this constant violence and hearing it all the time, getting it coming into us, I believe over a period of time, it starts affecting us, it starts wearing us down. And even if we don't subscribe to it, we can't help but be affected by it. Whenever I turn on the BBC News, and I'm constantly subjected to all what is going on in Ukraine, what is going on in Gaza, what is going on in the United States. And even here in the Caribbean, there is so much violence and there's so much talk of violence. And everyone seems to be moving to respond to violence with violence. So that there is a growing violent culture that is, I believe, that is arising. And I detected it's happening in the subconscious level, or the universal subconscious of all of us. And I believe it's affecting all of us. And then this morning, I participated in a Zoom meeting with a number of Christian meditators that spans across the globe. We're talking about from Singapore to Scotland, to France, to United States, to Canada, Caribbean, all over. And in that session, there was that discussion of what is going on, that there is a violence that is all over, that seems to dominate the airwaves and dominate our lives. So I thought that I should address that in this episode number 2, that we should deal with that level or that culture of that universal subconscious of violence that is going on. So I decided to postpone the discussions on New Testament and deal with non-violence. That how do we in our lives subscribe to, live a non-violent life, and how do we permeate it into the world? How do we spread it? How do we create a counterculture of non-violence in our world today? And yet, despite all that is going on, non-violence is possible. Within the last 2 weeks, we have had readings from St. John Gospel about the cross, about Jesus on the cross and the exaltation of the cross. And within those readings, Jesus said, take up your cross every day and follow me. And he also said turn the other cheek, to forgive. When he was on the cross, he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." And he said, when you encounter an enemy and an enemy approaches you with whatever way of violence, turn the other cheek. If they want your cloak, give them your tunic as well. So Jesus has laid out for us a theology, a spirituality of non-violence. And therefore, non-violence is possible. And within the last century, we have had examples of that. We've had Martin Luther King and his non-violent movement. We've had Nelson Mandela when he came out of prison and his non-violence message. We have Mahatma Gandhi and his non-violent message. We've had many persons, Saint Teresa of Calcutta, and all of them preach a message on non-violence. And therefore, it is not just that it is urgent for us to subscribe to non-violence with what is going on into the world, but we must recognize that non-violence is not weakness. Non-violence has been tried, it is successful, and the only response to violence in this world is non-violence. So we want to start, and we want to adopt a counterculture of non-violence in the face of all the violence that is going on in the world. And non-violence starts with ourselves, that we must be non-violent towards ourselves. A lot of violence starts internally, that we see that there's something in ourselves that we don't like and we are violent towards it. That for us to be able to live and to preach non-violence, we also have to treat ourselves non-violently. And non-violent self-treatment starts with recognizing that all human beings, all of us are created in the image and likeness of God. And therefore, when we see there's a wasp that is attacking me here, probably doesn't want me to speak about non-violence. When we treat ourselves non-violently, when we look at ourselves that we are in the image and likeness of God, then we recognize that we are non-violent. We do not have to subscribe to violence. So how can we live, and how can we start to practice non-violence? I think I just want to leave 5 simple points that we can memorize, that we can activate on. The first one is start thinking of ourselves and others as children of God. That each time we tend to want to be violent with ourselves or violent with others, we bring to mind, I am a child of God, they are children of God. And how would I treat everyone as a child of God? That's the first one. The second point is speech. How do we change our language? How do we change our speech so that we become less violent with our speech? How do we criticize and condemn less? How do we have a language that speaks of gentleness, that speaks of caring, that speaks of kindness? Third point, how do we forgive? How do we let go of the past? How do we stop holding grudges? How do we stop taking and saying that I have this person in my mind violently? So how do we practice that way of peace, that way of forgiveness, of letting go, of moving on? And then finally, how do we start Christian meditation? Deep prayer, whether it is prayer through Christian meditation, whether it is the Jesus prayer, whether it is the rosary, but times of silence in our lives when we stop the constant noise of violence that is going on in the world. We stop it for a while and we pause and we meditate. We become connected with that spark of God within us, and we then communicate with God in a more meaningful, silent, less violent way. I believe if we start with these 5 practices, we can make a difference. And then finally, how can we come together? And I'm going to invite some other persons in the next few podcasts. How can we come together to practice and to preach and to be nonviolent? I hope you enjoy this podcast, as I believe it is something that is very, very urgent that we must look at. And I hope you appreciate and you join me in creating a subculture of nonviolence. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.